Today I'm going to show you how to make the best sour cream cake donuts. They are fried to perfection and they're soft and pillowy on the inside, and they've got that perfect crunchy caramelized outside that's dipped in my classic donut glaze for that absolutely amazing and perfect old-fashioned cake donut. If you're enjoying this video, be sure to hit the subscribe button below and click the bell icon to be notified every time I post a new and delicious recipe. Let's get into it. So, donuts. I know they sound stressful, they sound really hard, but it's so easy. It's like almost like making a cake batter and just rolling it out. Like, just don't stress. Like, we've got this. I promise. Okay, so we've got in our bowl here AP flour. You could use pastry flour. My recipe on my blog uses pastry flour, but I have used AP flour for the last 5 or so years. So AP flour, baking powder, and kosher salt. Now this is a lot of flour. It's a lot of donut, right? It looks like a lot of salt. It's about a tablespoon. Just use it. Grab yourself a whisk those together. You know, this is really just for nothing more than just to kind of combine, all right, to disperse the baking powder and the salt so there's no like packets in your donuts because ew. Okay. All right, so next step, we're gonna start making our dough. I know. So we've got ourselves some butter here. It's not a ton of butter, it's a little bit of butter. It's mostly sugar. And so we're just gonna get this, a little bit softened. It doesn't really have to be incredibly soft because it's not gonna cream, right? There's too much sugar to butter ratio for any sort of creaming to happen. So what we are gonna do is just kind of get it going, get a little soft. Now if you had temperature butter, which I never do, unless it's accidental, then you wouldn't have to do this. You could add this sugar right now. But I am who I am. Voila. We are gonna add our sugar. Start on low, it's a lot of sugar. We don't want a cloud of sugar happening in our kitchen. We want all the sugar in our donuts. So just kind of start it on low and then kind of pick up the pace. And just acknowledge that it's not a lot of butter. So you're gonna get like a sandy kind of texture in there. And that's exactly what we want. Give it a scrape down because sometimes that butter likes to stay on the sides and such. Just kind of get it to where it needs to be. Now this recipe makes 12 donuts unless you re-roll your scraps, which you can do one time. You can make half a batch. It might be a little difficult in a mixer of this size, but you can 100% make half a batch and make 6 donuts. No one's saying you can't do that. Because I know getting into 12 donuts, just introducing that in your life is a lot. And some days you just want to spread them on the donut. We've got a nice sandy texture in here. We're just waiting for that last stubborn bit of butter to kind of mix into our sugar because you don't want a chunk of butter in your donuts anywhere. It's not going to rise nicely. It's going to melt and leave a hole, and it's just going to be a weird situation, and you don't want that. And now we're going to add our egg yolks. So go ahead and turn that on a little bit lower and whoop, you kind of beat it in. I'm going to add one at a time, or approximately one at a time. You kind of scrape down between each one because it does get kind of stuck on the sides. So just add the last little bit here, just scrape it all in. All of it counts. All matters. Okay. Scrape it down one more time. Make sure all those yolks are incorporated. None of them are just hanging about. So our eggs are doing the thing. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna turn our mixer down to low, and we are gonna alternately add our dry ingredients and our sour cream. And I'm gonna get an apron because I am smart today. All right, so we're gonna turn our mixer to low. Yes, low. Why? Have you seen the quantity of ingredients we're gonna add here? I like to go back and forth, and I'm not, being super, I'm not waiting in between. I've got like a flow going, and all we're doing is just kind of trying to incorporate as quickly and efficiently as possible, right? So we are trying to make sure that we don't develop too much gluten, because that is going to make tough donuts. And we want light and tender. You don't want to dilly-dally between additions here. It's not what that's about. This is not the time to check anything on your phone. This is the time to be mixing some donuts. Now, you watched my videos before, you know that this is how we mix cake around here. This is like, there's no dilly-dallying. And for the last bit of sour cream, we're gonna stop our mixer and we are gonna take the time it takes to get all of this sour cream out and into our mixer bowl, right? Now, we don't wanna be letting it mix while we're doing this. No spare gluten development. Now, while we're here and we're stopped, we can take this moment to just kind of scrape down our bowl a little bit. It's like a shaggy dough situation happening in here. It's not gonna look anything like cake, right? Because they are called cake donuts, and that is because they're not yeasted, but it is not cake, okay? We're not just frying cake batter. Pull it back up, put her back on, get the last of the dry ingredients in here. Yep, just really work that in. There's some dry bits down at the bottom here. I'm just gonna give it a scrape. Now, it's a delicate balance between over mixing and not incorporating enough, okay? This is maybe the trickiest part of the donut process, is making sure you don't over mix your dough or under mix it. But like, you've got this too, I promise. If you dump it out right onto your plastic wrap or whatever you're gonna rest it in, and you see that there are bits of flour, like a lot, just knead it together. Just knead it together. It's fine. Okay? So I'm gonna finish it by hand. I'll show you what I do on my thing over here. It's not that arduous. Now I'm gonna see if I can just kind of go ahead and mix this in my bowl. I'm just kind of moving the top and the bottom together to kind of try and work in some of those dry bits that are at the bottom. Now it is a sticky dough, right? Once we get all of this in, it is a bit of a sticky dough, and you know that kind of trips some people up, but don't be dissuaded by it, okay? It's fine. All you have to do is use some bench flour. I'm gonna wrap this in plastic wrap to chill. So grab yourself some plastic wrap. I like to do this on plastic wrap or something like that, on a sheet pan, and press it flat, because that helps it cool faster, chill faster, relax faster. It'll also help make the rolling process easier. Go ahead and put a little bit of bench flour on here. Trust me, you're not gonna regret it. Grab your dough, place your dough here, press it out. Yep, just give it a nice little press out. Put a little bit more bench flour on top. Go ahead and wrap her up. We kneaded it together, which I don't love, that's not like my favorite thing, because anything where you're working the gluten like that isn't going to be great for it, but we aren't gonna stress about that because we know that they're gonna be phenomenal. All right, so what we're gonna do is we're gonna take this dough packet, we're gonna pop it in the fridge, and it has to chill for at least 30 minutes. Because I was a little, I had to knead it, I'm gonna chill it for 45 to an hour, and then we're gonna check back in, we're gonna roll her out, cut it out, and then it has to chill again. And later, I'll tell you all of my tips for how to make it ahead, when you can make each step, so to make this as easy as possible and spread it out over days if you'd like. All right, it's been about an hour, just shy of an hour, and we're ready to roll out our donuts and cut them. So first we've got, to kind of get things a little set up here, I've got myself a baking sheet. Any will do, because it's not actually going to go in the oven, it's just to land it. Piece of parchment paper, and then I'm going to spray my parchment paper lightly. This is really just so that the donuts don't stick to it later. Now, I've got a little bench flour here, so we are going to just generously dust the surface of our bench with the flour, because this dough is a little sticky, but it's not, unmanageably so. It's just, we just know this and we work with it. So let's go ahead and just turn her out. onto our floured surface. And then, yeah, we've got a little sticky parts up here, so go ahead, because obviously we already pre-floured her, so that's, that's helping us a bit here too as well. All right, grab yourself a rolling pin, and we're gonna roll it to about a 1/2 inch thick. Now, since we already had it nicely kind of pressed out, this is not an arduous task. This is just a very easy kind of thing that we're doing here, and we don't need to stress about it. Okay, looks about right. Now, all we're gonna do is we're gonna cut our circles. This is about 2 3/4 of an inch. Not on purpose, it just is what this thing has, so that's what we're gonna use. You can use anything from 2 to 3 inches, just depends on how big you would like your donuts. So we're gonna go ahead and just cut them here, kind of keeping them close together without actually touching. Now, I'm not gonna get a full one out of that, so I'm gonna go ahead and just grab these guys, kind of pull them out. So the hole for cake donuts is actually necessary. It's not just to look cute or have donut holes, although those are nice side benefits. It is actually functional, and they will not fry properly without the hole. So you will get a gooey undercooked center and a really dark, unpleasant, overcooked exterior. So just know that the hole is not optional. You could use, if you don't have a set of cutters, you could 100% use a piping tip, or you could literally just cut it out with a little paring knife or something. It's not gonna be as cute, but it will at least fry nicely. So there are options for you. So we'll start just moving these to our tray as we're done with them. Again, as long as they're not touching on the tray, then that's fine. If you do let them kind of sit too long on the bench and maybe you don't have enough bench flour, they will stick to your bench again. I got lots of comments about this dough being very sticky, and it is, but it is manageable with the right amount of bench flour. Now we are of course going to fry our little donut holes, so go ahead and put those on your sheet as well. Now we've got some choices to make here, peeps. We can re-roll our scraps. We could chill it for about another 30 minutes and re-roll the scraps and get more donuts. You can re-roll one time, or we can just cut a ton of donut holes. All of these are great options, and it really depends on what you want to do. So I'm gonna cut a couple additional holes here. I am 1 donut short, and I'm really annoyed about it, so I'm gonna just kind of roll this just a little bit thinner right here. Sometimes the shape of your dough doesn't match, what is ideal for cutting. So you just kind of have to work with that. It's not that much thinner, but I will make sure I adjust my frying time for that, okay? So obviously it's not gonna fry as long, and we wanna just be aware. So I'm gonna go ahead and take my scraps. I'm gonna put them in the fridge to re-roll them later. And yeah, you can't really save them longer than 3 days. So just know that this dough is not good for more than 3 days in the fridge without frying it. So you really need to be done with the whole process by day 3. All right, grab yourself your plastic wrap. We're gonna go ahead and wrap this baby up. It's looking good, guys. Looking good. Yeah. Fridge. So we just popped our donuts, or cut donuts in the fridge, and they're gonna chill for 2 hours before we fry them. That allows the gluten to relax after the arduous process that she just went through of the rolling and the cutting, and it's going to allow our, the most tender, fluffy cake donuts, right? So we don't want to skip the chillings. We don't want to rush the process because rushed donuts are, less than satisfying donuts. So we're gonna take this moment to talk about all the things you can do during this process to make it easier, in the sense that how to spread out the donut making process over a couple days, when you can wait, when you cannot. So starting with mixing our dough. So when you mix your dough and you're chilling her in that, kind of bulk packet, if you will, that can be, you can wait overnight for that. And then you can roll it out the next day, or you can wait 30 minutes, roll it out, cut them, and then after they're cut, they need to at least chill 2 hours, obviously, but they can also chill up to 2 days. The total amount of time from dough mixing to dough frying cannot be more than 3 days, okay? Your baking soda or your baking powder is gonna lose potency over that time. The texture is going to suffer. They're not gonna puff as much. And your dough will start to discolor. If you've ever looked at pie dough in the refrigerator after a couple of days, you've seen it kind of get that like grayish tint to it. Well, it's not cute, right? It may be really cute on the wall, but it is not cute in your dough. So if you space it out, that's cool, but just keep in mind that the total is 3 days, 2 nights. So obviously we're doing it all in one day, and you can too because it's super easy. But, if you want fresh fried donuts at 9 a.m. and you don't particularly feel like getting up at 5 to do it, well, we've got options for you. All right, so our donuts have been resting for about 3 hours, not for a particular reason, just that I was not ready for them. But right now I've got my fryer setting up here. It's currently at 230 degrees. We're gonna go to 350 degrees, but I am gonna turn it off before it gets there, probably around 330, just because the oil will continue to heat, right? So you don't wanna go over, and you don't want to, get your oil so hot that it like hits that smoke point and it changes flavor. First, while that happens, we're just gonna make sure we are completely set up and ready to rock and roll. Part of that is making our glaze. So this is just my classic donut glaze. I've got confectioner sugar. I also have a little bit of salt because I forgot and just put it in there. And then I have vanilla and milk. So we're just gonna go ahead and add about half of that, whisk it in. Now, I like to glaze my donuts hot. If you want to glaze them when they've cooled, then you'll need to heat your glaze. So you kind of just need to play with that consistency. You either glaze hot donuts with a lukewarm, like just a regular room temperature glaze, or you need to put this over a double boiler, so over some simmering water, and just heat your glaze just a little bit, which you can of course do anyways. So go ahead and get the rest of your milk in there. There's a little bit left in there. I just want to make sure that it's the consistency we want. All right, I'm just whisking it really well because I want to make sure that there's no lumps in there. If your powdered sugar is super duper lumpy, then you're gonna want to sift it. But that's really the only case that you would actually sift your powdered sugar for a glaze. Okay, so we've got a nice, beautiful consistency here. It runs off my spoon or my whisk. It's not too thick. And then I'm gonna check my oil. We're at 250, so we're not quite there yet. We wanna make sure we have a nice flow. We wanna have our mise en place, our whole station set up. So I'm gonna put this right here so I don't have to track it too far, although I might, depending on, so you can see it. But what we've got here, obviously we have our glaze, and we've got a lined baking dish that I have fitted with a wire rack. And this is to allow not only the glaze eventually to drip off, but also the oil. So when we take our donuts that's perfectly fried, we're gonna place it on here, allow it to drip, and get rid of some of that excess oil before we dip it in our glaze. I also have, this is called a spider. If you don't have this, you can use a slotted or a perforated spoon to fish your donuts out. But a spider is a really nice tool, especially if you fry frequently, even infrequently, honestly, it's just super useful. And then I have myself a cake tester, right? This is what I'm gonna use to test the doneness of my cake donuts. So you're gonna pop it in, pull it out. When it comes out clean, they're done. I'm not gonna pull my donuts out until this is ready. I don't want them to, you wanna fry them cold, okay? You want to pull them from the refrigerator and fry them. You want to get that nice puff, and part of that is making sure you get all of your expansion in your oil. All right, so we've got our donuts here. You can see them. They're lovely. And then I'm not going to completely uncover them. I'm just going to kind of uncover part of it because I don't want to, I'm going to pop them back in the fridge between rounds essentially, and I don't want them to dry out. Which really, I mean, it's not going to take that long, but just in an excess of precaution. So I like to fry donuts anyways, anywhere between 345 and 350 because I find that 325 is too low. The donuts absorb too much oil, and then you kind of get an oily donut. I think that 375 is too hot, then the outside is too dark and overcooks before the inside has time to cook. So I really think that 350 is that really nice median temperature that is just like perfect. Okay, so we're very close, a couple degrees off. I am going to take it right to it, even just a little bit over like 352, you know, like something like that, just to make sure that we are compensating for our cold dough. We're going to go ahead and drop our donuts in. You can do this two ways. I have no fear, so I just drop them in like so. You can also put them on your spider and then lower them down. Okay? Both great options, but do not drop it from here. You know, you need control, okay? I like to fry 3 or 4 at a time. It really depends on the pot. So once it rises, I fry it about 30 seconds before I flip it over. And then I'll kind of go another 80 seconds and then flip and then another 30 and they're usually done. But you can always poke it with a cake tester to see if it's done. But once it gets that nice, so it didn't really change our temperature. So I'm gonna go ahead and turn this off because I was already on low. We're at 352-ish, I'd say. And so let's just go ahead and let that kind of come down a little bit. It's a constant monitoring. It's not unless you have an actual fryer, tabletop fryer, you know, you have to monitor your temperature and constantly be adjusting your flame or the heat of your burner in order to actually compensate. So I'm going to go ahead and flip these over. To do that, I just kind of touch it and then allow it to flip. Now I see that my oil is, it's right at 350. So I'm just going to go ahead and put on really, really low. This like simmer function over here. This burner is a little bit intense for what I like, but I want you to be able to see it. So you can see that after our first flip, we got a nice little golden brown. And then, we'll give her a little bit more time on this side. Now this pot has a bit more space, so next time I can do probably 5 at a time. It's about how many you feel comfortable, frying in your pot so they have enough space, but also about how many you want to dip. Let me turn my flame up. We're at 340, so it continued to drop even though I turned it on low. So I just want to give it a little bit more gas. You could set a timer, you could set your stopwatch. Give them a flip. Oh my gosh, look at that beautiful golden brown. Give them a moment on the other side to give it a quick fry on that side. So I'm gonna go ahead and pull one out so we can test it. So all you have to do is kind of take your spider or whatever tool you're using and just give it a little poke right through the center, pull it out. Just make sure that, it comes out clean, and it does. So these guys are done. And we put them all in about the same time, so they're all probably done. There was no residue there, so we can go ahead and just get all of these guys out. We'll check my oil. It's at 340, so I'm not gonna put another round in right now because I want to make sure that my oil is the right temperature. And if I put it in at 340, it's gonna drop lower, and then we're gonna have, because we're gonna put cold dough in hot oil, drop the temperature, so we don't want it to be any lower than that. So we are at 340. I just want to get it back up to that 350 before we put the next round in. And while that next round is frying, we can dip our donuts in the glaze, and then we can just keep going back and forth. Now, you see how these donuts are nice and tight? I expect the next round, because I actually didn't put them back in the fridge, I expect the next round to be a little bit more voluminous because they are warmer, so they're not gonna, puff in quite as the same controlled fashion. All right, so we are right at 350, and I'm gonna go ahead and start dropping these in. The easiest way to get donut holes in there is in fact on your spider, because it is hard to get them in there and not have them like plop. So while these are frying, I'm gonna flip them in just a second. You do wanna give them enough time to kind of get that initial golden brown on the bottom before you flip them, just so you don't have too blonde of a donut. I'm gonna turn the little holes, you can kind of just poke, and some of them will turn over and some of them won't, and that's okay. Ideally, we'd like them to get an even golden brown, but sometimes depending on where the air pockets are, they won't actually flip over, and so, you're kind of stuck with a thing that looks like a underbaked tater tot. So, I've got my glaze covered in plastic wrap to keep from getting a skin. These are still pretty warm. They're not as warm as I would like them ideally. So that means that we're gonna get probably a thicker glaze than we'd like, but just kind of, give it a little bath and then bring it over to the side. So I like to kind of drop it in, turn it around, turn it over, kind of give it a twirl about, and then pull her out. Shake it off just a little bit, and then put her back on your baking sheet. So down, flip over, twirl around, and then just shake off some of that excess. All right, now these guys over here, I'm gonna pop back in the fridge to make sure they're nice and cold. Now, flip these back over. They're nice golden brown. You see that beautiful color there. That's exactly what you want. My oil has dropped to 345, so I'm gonna keep her on. These little donut holes are definitely done, so we can pull those out. You can, of course, also test those with a cake tester as well. They look like tater tots. Do they not? Okay, let's go ahead and give them a test, see what's happening. And the good thing with the cake tester is that, you can be reasonably assured that it's done, because nobody wants an unfried, like a raw donut on the inside. That's just really gross. You see how some of these, like this one, like he was like the one that was not quite as, he was out here, he was a little closer to the flame. Our oil is at 350, so we could go ahead and just drop those last ones in. Now my oil did not drop when I added those, so I'm just gonna go ahead and turn that off for just a second. Okay, now it's kind of going down, so I'm gonna turn it on low and let those continue to fry while we dip these donuts. I have no fear of the heat of these donuts. They're not that hot. I mean, to me, they don't feel like they're that hot, but I also have no feeling left in my fingers. So if you want to use gloves, you can. If you want to use, some people use chopsticks, which I think sounds really hard. Like, I feel like life is hard enough without having to try and use chopsticks to glaze your donuts. But, whatever you want to do, that's what you should do. Let's quickly flip these over. I'm gonna use my other hand because this one is all goobered up. Right. And then I'm gonna do these little holes. All right, just give them a flip, see what happened. Oh, no, they need a little bit more time over there. See, they're a little too light, so I wanna make sure that they're like that nice dark golden brown before I flip them over to do a final. So we're still riding at 350, feeling real good about our fryer control today. Just a little pat on the back. So she's dropped considerably, so I'm gonna turn it on high because we do not want greasy donuts. No. No, 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 no. Okay. So we're just gonna give them a test, pull them out. Okay, they're done. So let's go ahead and get these drip drying. Try to avoid your other donuts because that's nasty. And that's it. Now you have fried the perfect sour cream cake donut. Before we try, I want to address a question I get all the time on the blog, because this is actually the #1 post on cheflindseyfarr.com a lot of the time. So I want to address a question I get all the time, which is, can you bake these donuts? The answer is no, but I wanted to show you why not. So I baked one, right? So we can see the difference visually here. We don't need, much description, but obviously it's, it's brown on the other side, but it is completely blonde on the top. That's because it's mostly, it's mostly flour, right? Like there's some sugar in there, there's some, like a little bit of egg yolk, like a tiny bit of butter, but like there's, it's just, she looks a little sad, right? A little dry. And that is because it is going to be dry because it's a dry dough. If you think about the difference between cake batter and this dough that we fried, cake batter would fall apart in your fryer oil. But so you need a donut that has that higher amount of flour in it in order to stay together when it's fried. Okay, it's going to puff. It's going to do all those things. Like this guy puffed. But it just looks kind of sad. And yes, she has no glaze on her, but it's not the glaze. It's the problem here, people. It is the baking. So this baked at 350 for about 20 minutes, just a little under 20 minutes. And you can see that it puffed, right? You can see she puffed. And, I'm going to try it. I don't want to. I really don't want to. Okay. Because our dough tastes good, like our donuts taste good, right? The dough tastes nice, but it's light, but it's a lot more dense than the fried version. So really, so technically, obviously you can bake it, but you're gonna get something that's a little bit, it's a little bit more dense, it's a little more chewy, and not as light and airy, and just, melt in your mouth, right? So the answer is no. Please don't. So now that we've covered that and we've all fried and we're so happy that we fried, we can dig in because it's time to try. All right, without further ado, should we pick one? Gosh. So you can see the outside has puffed. The glaze has started to set. It's not set on the bottom yet. It's been a hot minute, guys. It's been a hot minute. But who doesn't like hot donuts straight from the fryer? I mean, this is what it's all about, right? This is why we fry our own donuts. So you can see all the crags and all the crevices and all of that beautifulness. It's got all the crannies have glaze in them. And then we're just gonna pop her open. Oh my goodness. Look at this. You can see that the fryer oil has not permeated or penetrated towards the center. So if if your oil was too low, you get that kind of oily center, which, ew. So this is perfectly crisp on the outside and then light and fluffy on the inside. And I'm just going to dive in because, yeah. It's perfect. With crunchy exterior and that soft, pillowy, perfect cake donut interior. I don't really know how else to describe it. It's just it's like a pillow of fried love. You can taste the sour cream and the dough that we used. It's just so light and fluffy. And then that perfect crunch and a little extra sweetness from the glaze, because the donut itself isn't incredibly sweet. And so all together, it's just this wonderful, perfect sour cream cake donut.